Oh, hello. It's time for Top Dice. Hi, and welcome to Top Dice. My name's Zaid, and with me today, I've got Alan. Alan, tell us a bit
Hello.
about yourself.
I'm Allan Wroe, long-time gamer. First role-playing experience was Redbox D&D in probably 1984 or something like that. Worked in the packaging industry, worked for 20 years in the recruitment industry, and when COVID killed the recruitment industry, or at least the sector I was working in, I was able to follow my passion. There was nothing else to do with my time except a book that I've been working on and a Kickstarter. And this book was born, if you can see that, the Secret Files of Section D,
Yeah.
which is a sort of pulp espionage setting for Savage Worlds. And that's gone quite well. It's been certainly very well received in the Savage Worlds community, and we're now pushing on getting it out there into more places.
Yeah, I have a copy. So
Oh,
there we go.
well, good to know.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you didn't know that, did you?
I didn't know that actually. No.
No, Roger, who's one of the other members of the group,
Yeah.
picked a copy up and recommended it, and so lo and behold, I ended up going and getting a copy as well.
Oh well.
Right, so there we.
I'm humbled.
Yeah, well, it shouldn't be. It's good. It's a darn good read. There's lots of information there. You can use it with a multitude of different role-playing systems, not
Yeah.
just Savage World. So that's one of the other advantages. So anyway, we've got that book there. How long did it take you to sort of write that book?
Oh, right. So it, the life cycle of it is quite a story, to be fair. It started out at a convention. I've been running some Savage Worlds games at a convention, and that turned into a regular. When everybody turns up at this convention on a Friday night, and Alan's going to run us a game. And I was looking for something new, and I'd run some fantasy stuff, and I was just looking for something completely new. And literally, I was sat exactly where I am now. And my wife was working at home this particular day, and she came in to the room where I work, and she said, "Do you want a cup of tea?" And I said, "Oh, want a cup of tea? That sounds like the Aztec god for having a brew." And literally from that spawned this idea of where would you find the Aztec god want a cup of tea? And you find him in the ancient temple of Putacatalan. And that was just the nucleus of an idea for a con game. And then it was who would go looking for this thing and why. And the whole thing just develops from there. So I wrote this adventure called Better Latte Than Never. And that's the one that's just been released actually in the last couple of months. And I ran that for the guys at the convention. Now, one of the players was a gentleman called Simon Burley, who might be known to you.
I know Golden Heroes.
Yeah, I was just going to say, for those who don't know the name, they might know Golden Heroes, and he wrote that. And after the second session of this, he came to me and he said, "You need to publish that. The setting, the idea, the puns, and everything like that. Just it'll go down an absolute storm." And I didn't think that much of it until, as I said earlier on, until lockdown. And I'm there and thinking, well, I've got this recruitment business, but I can't actually do anything with it. So what am I going to do with my time? And I thought, well, there's never going to be a better opportunity. So that's how the Secret Files of Section D came to life, and I got more and more interested the more research I did, because Section D is a real thing. When Winston Churchill came to power, became Prime Minister in 1940, things were not going very well, but one of the things that was building up was the espionage and sabotage side of things, and Section D was a big part of that.
Yeah.
So what Winston Churchill did was he amalgamated Section D and the military research, development, and a couple of other organisations, and that's what formed the Special Operations Executive.
Yeah.
So when SOE was formed, something like 90% of their field operatives were Section D. So they were already in place, and that's why they were able to get into action very, very quickly, because a lot of the networks and things had already been built. So what I've done is I put a very pulpy kind of spin on it, The elevator pitch for the Secret Files of Section D is it's Indiana Jones meets the X-Files with a sprinkling of LOLO.
It comes across as well like, and you could almost sort of say for those that wanted to, Section D, their offices may have sat next to the laundry back in the day.
Do you know, I was chatting to a guy at a convention, and he'd seen Section D, and he said, "Oh, have you read the Laundry Files?" And I said, "Well, no. What's that then?" And this was literally maybe 2 years ago. So I was totally oblivious to the Laundry Files up until about 2 years ago. And then when I look at it, it's like, well, yeah, if there is a modern day successor to Section D, that's it. It's got to be that.
Well, I would sort of say that Section D is still going, but the Laundry Files are in the next block along. Very much so, because they would work very, very well next to each other. So if anybody, I know there's a Laundry Files role-playing game currently in Kickstarter.
There's a new version coming out, yeah.
It would work very, very well for crossovers, etc., and for anybody wanting to run that sort of espionage game with outrageous deities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the things with the Section D book that I really wanted to put a lot of time and effort into is I wanted to make it a toolkit for a GM as well.
Yeah.
So yes, it's got that pulp theme, but it's got adventure generators. It's got things in there for generating your MacGuffins, crazy gadgets and all of that kind of thing. It's got full card-based generators for villains and their lairs and all of that. So there's loads and loads of tools in there for a GM as well, whether you're running an espionage or pulp kind of game or not. So.
Well, it certainly works. I have read it. It very, very definitely works. And it's one that I would actually suggest. So, is there a Section D Part 2 coming, or is there something else completely different that you're working on?
Okay, so Section D was done as a Kickstarter. Part of that Kickstarter was a series of 3 adventures. Now, I have to, hand on heart, I'm late in delivering some of those adventures. That's one of those life happens kind of things, unfortunately. But I also realised when I started doing the layout work that some of the writing that I'd done was rubbish. So a lot of it had to be almost taken back to the beginning. So the first of those adventures, Better Latte Than Never, that came out a couple of months ago, and that's on Drive-Thru RPG.
Yeah.
There's also a taster edition on Drive-Thru RPG. So you can actually, if you've got the Savage Worlds rules, you can try Section D for free. There's a full adventure in that, the taster edition, including plans for the bad guys Zeppelin and Volcano Base, because pulp, you've got to have them. After that, we've got 2 more adventures in the trilogy for Better Latte Than Never, those being Going for a Song, which I'm hoping is going to be 4 weeks or so away. And then Shades of Grey, which I know I'm going to need to do some rewrites on, purely because I got a bit too close to the bone on some of the subject material, which I'm not going to go into.
No, don't.
But I've been advised by somebody, a couple of guys who've helped me a lot with it, that let's just say it's set in the late 1930s. On the cusp of war, and I went a little bit too far with something. And I didn't, something that a British person would find highly amusing, and other people were just like, "Oh no, you can't do that." so the bottom line is, no, you can't.
Maybe you should do a special edition at some stage just for the UK market.
Well. No, because at the end of the day, I do kind of get what the point was. At some point, I probably will say what that was. But
we'll do an exclusive here in, say, 5 years. Is that okay for you?
Yeah. So there's plenty of plans, and then all things going well, the next major step for Section D is going to be Cold War. So the beauty of that is that Section D as an entity ceased to exist in 1940. So the way that we've written the way that I wrote the book is that it didn't cease to exist. It just became more secretive.
Black Ops,
So and after that, you can do anything you want. So we've got the we've got the Cold War era and the UFO craze and all of that kind of stuff that you can start playing with. So it's
Bring
a
it on.
massive, yeah, it's a massive playing field.
Well, it sounds like you've got some big jobs ahead of you there. Now we'll move on to your other thing, distribution,
Yeah,
game
yes.
distribution. So tell us a bit about this one.
Okay, so how that came about was because of the Section D book. So what I did with the Kickstarter for Section D is that I wanted to go for an offset printed book. I didn't want to go down the print on demand route. Now, that works for a lot of people. For me personally, I've worked in the print industry, so I know it can be done. And I've had a bad experience. Me personally, I had a bad experience with print on demand. I know some people think it's absolutely brilliant. I've had a bad experience. I didn't want to go down that route. So we come to this time last year, and I've got a big pallet of, I've got 500 copies of Section D sitting in a warehouse, of which about 100 or so were committed to Kickstarter. So then it's right, okay, we need to get this into shops. So I started phoning around a few game shops and saying, I've got this game, are you interested? And a lot of game stores were saying to me, your book sounds great, but we're not going to stock it because we can't get the core rules. And I heard this time and time again, and I dug into it. Yeah, well, why can't you get the core rules? And it basically came down to the distributor that Pinnacle were using. They would sit on orders until they had a big chunk of orders, and then they would ship from the US.
Yeah, I've experienced this as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's not just Pinnacle. There's a lot of other products, a lot of other publishers, which I'll come on to shortly. So because I've got the license, a publishing ACE license with Pinnacle, I've kind of got a line into to some of their sort of top people. So I had a chat. Yeah, we had a chat with them, and we said, look, this isn't working for you. It's not working for me. I can't sell my book. It's not working for you. You're not selling your books, apart from on a very sporadic basis. And GMS were my distributor for Section D. So I spoke with GMS and I said, what if we speak to Pinnacle? We'll get a bunch of their stuff over here, and then we can start supplying the shops that want it. So we had a conversation with Pinnacle. They liked the idea, and that's exactly what we did. And it was about this time last year that we got that in place, because we had a boatload of stuff shipped over to us in time for UK Games Expo last year. So loads and loads of people were coming to the stand, and they're picking up the core rulebook, the Savage Worlds core rulebook, and said, I've not seen one of these on a shelf for years.
No, you don't.
Yeah. So the response was really good. And we developed the relationship more with Pinnacle. We expanded the range, and we've brought more and more stuff over. And we brought a shipment that arrived at the beginning of this week, and that had over 2,000 individual items, and has actually doubled our the range of what we're carrying for Pinnacle.
Yeah.
And that includes the new releases now as well. So it's not just a case of us getting the older stuff and playing catch up. We're now getting the new stuff at not exactly the same time it's released in the US, but close to. And that's great. And we've got a good number of retailers who love it, and they're buying the stock off us. And obviously we've got a big pile of it that we're going to be taking to UK Games Expo and things like that. So that's how I started with that. And then more recently, the guys at GMS asked if I would get involved as their sales manager. And to be fair, I needed to find something that was going to give me a bit more of a regular income. The book, bless it, I never ever regret doing that, but it hasn't earned me a wage. It's not sold millions.
No, it won't do.
It's not sold millions. It doesn't earn me a wage. So I needed something that was going to boost that, and this was just it's directly connected. I love games. I can the sales thing is natural to me. So it just worked. And now we're just developing, the relationships that we've had with some retailers are getting stronger, and we're developing new ones all the time.
Excellent. Right. Well, there's a few things there of interest that you've actually sort of said. Now, we mentioned Pinnacle, but
Hmm.
you also are involved with the distribution of quite a few other game lines and companies and various
So
businesses. So,
yeah, so the directors of GMS, Steve and Mark, are directors of their own games companies as well. So this is the thing: is the three main people, and I'm maybe bigging myself up, sort of counting myself in there. We are all publishers of games. So you've got Steve Turner, who owns Britannia Games,
yeah,
which is Chivalry and Sorcery primarily.
yeah.
Um, and then you've got Mark Rapson, who is the owner of Nightfall Games and Wordforge Games. So Nightfall is his role-playing game side, and that is all of the that is things like the Terminator role-playing game and Hellboy and things like that. Your microphone's muted, by the way. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I did it deliberately because the dogs were having a bit of a bark there for a second.
Right. My apologies. Mm. So yeah, so you've got Nightfall Games with Terminator and Hellboy and SLA Industries, and they've been involved recently in the Musketeers versus Cthulhu, and all of these things are available through GMS, both directly and into retail. And then there's some Stygian Fox Call of Cthulhu stuff.
Good stuff.
So,
Very good. Again, a great company, Stygian Fox. I can't sort of recommend them enough for their products. Nightfall as well. I've got Terminator 2.
yeah,
I backed it. It's not the only one, by the way. I'm quite a lot of others backed it as well. But
yeah, it's
again,
been very popular.
I think a lot of gamers are missing out on these companies and what they actually do, and the
Hmm.
quality of the products as well that
Yeah,
are actually sort of out there. Because up till quite recently, it's been so difficult to actually find them on
yeah.
the shelves.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, we've got a number of retailers out there now who are stocking the stuff and restocking from us regularly. We've got a very big, um, what do you want to call it, popular culture retailer who we've had some very positive conversations with. That's multiple stores around the UK.
Yeah.
Um, we're not over the line yet, but it's looking very, very, very positive. So I
Well,
won't say
no,
exactly who that is.
don't say. If you, I'll tell you what. If you could come back when the deal is done, and we'll do an announcement here, and then you can tell us. It's another way
Yeah.
of sort of pushing it. In
Hmm.
fact, what would be really good, I'm going to throw this idea at you. If you have a word with the various game shops that you're involved with, make sure that they're okay with it. And maybe we could actually sort of do a special top dice highlighting the various game shops, naming them around the country
Yeah.
that are actually stocking the products as well.
Hmm.
And it's just a way of getting the indie, and obviously you mentioned they're multiple, but also getting the indies actually out there. Because for me, one of the big things is getting the game shops out there. They're the hubs of what we do, as
Yeah.
in play
No, you're
games.
absolutely right.
It's where we get things. Yeah, Amazon is great because you get cheap product, but there's nothing like walking into a local game shop, having a conversation, and walking out with something. And I know this because I used to run one.
Yeah.
So um, that's where I used to get real buzz out of it, people coming
Hmm.
in. And yet the sales were great, but the conversations were amazing. And
Yeah.
they walked out with a huge smile on their face
Hmm.
when,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. I've sort of similar experience in doing what I do is being able to speak to people and say, "Have you seen this?" And they're like, mind blown. It's
yeah.
like, what's that?
Yeah,
And
exactly. You'll experience this at the conventions, the direct sort of the fan base, the customers coming in,
yeah.
seeing you actually sort of there. The
Hmm.
conversations you'll have about the 90th level paladin, they'll all be there for you. And the thing is, everyone makes an impression on you, and everyone is so into what they actually are doing, what the conversation they're having with you.
Yeah.
And that is a huge part, I think, of
Hmm.
the whole genre, the whole sort of hobby, everything all combined. And I just
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah. I mean, we were getting a lot of that with Games Expo last year because we
Yeah,
had Pathfinder for Savage Worlds. So a load of people were coming over to the stand and saying, "Oh, you've got Pathfinder," and we're saying, "No, it's not Pathfinder as you know it. It's Pathfinder for Savage Worlds." Well, what's the
yeah,
difference? And just being able to tell them about how Savage Worlds works mechanically, um, it is a completely different role-playing system
yeah,
to Pathfinder or a D&D.
yeah.
Totally different way of playing the game, and some people bought into it, and some people it's not for them. That's the great thing about our hobby, isn't it?
That's it.
Um,
If we
there's
all
a
like the
system out
same
there for
thing,
everybody.
that's it. Yeah, it's everybody's got the likes, everybody's got the dislikes. We all have things that we enjoy, and it's quite interesting because you might try a game, not like it, go back 5 years later, and all of a sudden, it's the thing for you. And
Yeah,
that's you'll always have your favourites. That sort of seems to sort of so stuck with me. But there's so
mhm,
many others that come in and fluctuate round about, and you think, oh yeah, and it's so diverse. I think
yeah,
on all sides is this. Um, so what are the best sellers at the moment through the wholesaling side? What are your findings actually sort of really going? Obviously, you've got the Pinnacle stuff there. I'm guessing that's
yeah.
doing really well.
That is doing really well, and it's they're great products, but they're also in demand, and I think a lot of that is because it's just not been so readily available here in the UK. So yeah, certainly at the moment as well, it's doing really well. Um, Other than that, yeah, Terminator's picking up. The Call of Cthulhu stuff is always popular, and I'd say the SLA Industries are probably the biggest ones going through
Mm.
GMS at the moment.
Yeah,
Um, Chivalry and Sorcery is just constant. Um, Never at the top, never at the bottom. It's just always going through, and Steve's great at getting new stuff out on a fairly regular basis, which always gives the sales a bit of a boost. So that's got a really solid following.
yeah,
So yeah, it's not like one of those that, like I said, it's never going to be all the way up there, but it's never down anywhere near the bottom either. It just,
yeah.
it's constant.
A good constant seller. Well, I'm not
Yeah,
surprised with the fan base and gamer base that it's actually sort of got with
mhm,
Chivalry and Sorcery, and
yeah,
also it's a very different game
yeah.
to. I'm just trying to. I suppose Pendragon is and Celtic are probably the two closest to it, but they're really in a different sort of area anyway. Chivalry and
But
Sorcery for me is
mechanically, yes,
yeah.
and
The
I
me-
always loved the magic system in CNS.
mm,
It's just that whole idea that you don't necessarily have a spell; you use magic to do what you want,
yeah,
and that to me that was always the whole essence of how something like that should work.
yeah,
I appreciate from a game point of view, it's really useful to have a firebolt and a sleep spell and things like that. But CNS gets into the kind of how you can do things slightly differently as
yeah.
well, which I always loved.
I suppose almost I think yeah, the closest to it's probably going to be Ars Magica on that, but even then,
I've
you're
never
still
played
leagues
it.
away. It's still
Yeah.
leagues away. Yeah, it's Ars Magica is very much an acquired taste,
Mm.
so
Yeah.
it tends to be very Marmite. You either love it or you hate it. And I actually do
Yeah.
like it. I
I
do love
think
things.
the only system that actually comes close in flexibility is actually Savage Worlds. Because the way that Savage Worlds does spells or powers, as they're called in Savage Worlds, is that you have the basis of something and then you put the dressing on the top.
Yeah,
So if it's a bolt spell, it could be water, it could be ice, it could be beetles, it could be anything. You put the dressing on the top,
yeah,
and when you go into D&D, you've got ice bolt, fire bolt, water bolt, and they're all the same spell doing the same damage, but they're named differently and what have you. So um, Savage Worlds has a bit of that flexibility. Not as good as CNS, I would say, but your your mage playing character can take the same power and dress it up differently.
Yeah.
But it has to be done in advance. It's not something that you can do on the fly in a game or in a particular scenario, whereas CNS always allowed you to do that.
Yeah, yeah, it does. I must get Shane on sometime. He actually was the very first interview I did many, many, many years ago.
Oh, right,
Uh,
okay.
yeah, I did some online interviews. The very sort of when the internet was just becoming a thing. I was lucky enough to sort of interview him, Gary Gygax, and a couple of others, which
Right,
was wasn't over video. It
awesome.
was actually over text messaging, and then we posted the interview actually up on a website which is now long gone, unfortunately, those interviews. But yeah, he was actually the very first one. So
Right.
there we go.
Well, I'm speaking, well, not speaking directly with, but Shane's involved in a meeting that we've got with Pinnacle on Tuesday
Yeah,
about doing the fulfillment for their science fiction companion Kickstarter.
brilliant. Well,
So
lovely, an absolutely fantastic guy. Yeah, he's again a huge sort of lover of games
mm,
like ourselves. And talking about
yeah,
lover of games, we're going to go into something a bit more personal now.
okay,
Top three role playing games on the spot. Go on.
right,
What are they?
right. I'm going to have to say Savage Worlds. Um, not
Yeah,
only because I have a product for Savage Worlds, but I've been a player of Savage Worlds for 15 plus years. Played a number of different settings within that. Um, Hellfrost, Pathfinder, the science fiction type games. It's a great system. It is very much a go-to system for me. So top one has got to be Savage Worlds. After that, I'm going to say, ironically, this is a bit weird, but I'm going to say Traveller. Right.
not weird.
So it's a bit weird because I've never played it.
Right.
Um,
Okay. Yeah, that
I've
is a bit weird. Yeah. Right.
so pretty much ever since I've been a gamer, I've always had one or another copy of Traveller. Um, um, Little Black Books, Mega Traveller, Traveller T20. I've now got a bunch of Mongoose Traveller. I've run it on a number of occasions, but I've never played it. And I love the idea of Traveller. And do you know where it comes from for me? Is a video game came out in the early 80s called Elite. And
Yeah.
when somebody started telling me about the role Traveller RPG, I was like, oh my God, it's D&D, but in the Elite universe.
Yeah.
Sold, I'm in. So yeah, love the idea. Love Traveller. I do think personally, this is my own view. I think it's now these days a bit bloated. I think there's a bit too much of it. But that is just my own personal view. And then I'm going to finish with Games Workshop Judge Dredd. And again, wonderful, simple, easy system. This is a nostalgia call, really, because back in the day, we had a GM for Judge Dredd who was awesome. And he created this whole city sector that our little group were and he created all the NPC, all the important NPCs and the locations that you would go back to again and again and all of this, and it just became like it was our little world
Yeah.
for Judge Dredd. So from being a role playing experience, yeah, I would say that. But a close tie to that, and I know you said 3, I'm going to give 4. Close tie with that is CNS, for the same reason. One of the best campaigns that I've ever played was run using CNS, and the GM, he took a lot of inspiration from David Gemmell, from the Draenei series of David Gemmell, which I love. And we did this CNS campaign in that world, and it was just brilliant, and it sticks with me to this day. And people I know who played in that campaign, we still talk about it 20 plus years later.
Yeah.
And so yeah, just from a kind of a memories and what sticks with you thing.
Well,
So
there
there
we
you
go.
go.
We've
There you
got a top 4. So
go.
we've actually gained there.
Yeah.
So
I just want to, if I may, just go back to the whole GMS distribution thing,
yeah.
because with the new thing that we've got, they're on a plane So we're recording this Saturday morning, and on a plane from Memphis yesterday was a huge load of Troll Lord Games, Castles and Crusades stuff. So we've become the UK and Euro distributor for Troll
Right.
Lord Games,
Okay.
and we've got a load of new stuff going to arrive. It's probably going to arrive with us Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, because it's coming air freight. And yeah, we should be able to get that out, start getting that out to people by this time next week.
Brilliant.
And I'm really looking forward to seeing it,
Right.
because there's been a big demand. A lot of people saying that they're interested in seeing it. A lot of retailers saying that they're interested in seeing it. And yeah, we can't wait to get that out there in front of people.
Well, I'm going to ask when you get it, come back, and if we could do a show and tell of what you've got, how would that go?
Okay, that I can do definitely, but it is going to. So I live in South Manchester, and the stock is going to be in Warwick. So what I will do is I'll have to try and get some stuff up
That's
here,
well, we can
and
do
then
pictures. There's different ways we
yeah,
can actually do it because I'm
okay,
a huge Castles and Crusades fan.
right,
I've been since first edition. I
right,
bought the first edition stuff, Castle Zazig, etc.
yeah,
And I know how good that system is.
mm.
Um, and yeah, very much so. It would
I must
be
admit
very interesting.
I've been reading it recently and thinking I quite fancy having a go at running some of this actually,
It's so
because
easy to run.
yeah, I
That
fell out with D&D at 3.5. Um, and then people saying, "Oh, Castles and Crusades is kind of like the spiritual successor to AD&D 2." And
hmm,
now that I've started reading it, I kind of get that. It's maybe kind of where third edition should have gone.
yeah,
Um,
it's the way I see it. It's a cross between AD&D and third edition,
yeah.
which is, but it takes it to a slightly different level and drops a lot of the complexities. Not
Mm,
that well, third edition got very complex, and the way I sort of see it, it's possibly halfway between AD&D, which I regard. I know many people might disagree as being a very simple system. You can
hmm.
create a character in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You try that with fifth edition, just not going to happen. Um, and you can get playing so quickly. And like I said, I picked up the first edition because I recognised the name Castles and Crusades from something Gary Gygax had mentioned from many years
Yeah.
before. I'd read in the Dragon magazine, and I've not looked back since. I've got it
Hmm.
on my shelf,
Right.
and yeah,
Yeah.
it's one I'd pick up and play anytime.
Well,
So
you may be interested to know then. Part of our shipment, we've got a couple of cases of the commemorative first printing that have all been signed. So yeah, we're getting a couple of cases of those, which I'm really stoked about because I know there's
yeah,
a lot of fans out here that would be very interested in those.
well, I still use the first edition.
Right,
There we go.
right.
I have other bits, but and you know what? There's not much difference between the various editions, which is
No.
absolutely brilliant. It ports straight over.
Hmm.
So I from my side, I can't recommend Castles and Crusades enough. And I've actually got within easy. I think. Well, I'm not going to put. I've got it's under a pile of books actually next to me. I've actually got copies of the Crusader, which is actually the magazine they used to do as well.
Oh, right.
So, um, and just absolutely, yeah, absolutely. But those were probably one of the better magazines. That and White Dwarf and Imagine were probably my favourites, with Dragon
Mm.
a little bit behind that. So, well, thanks very much for sort of making us aware of that. I believe you're actually looking for people to actually run Castles and Crusades as well.
Right, so that's very much a nucleus idea at the moment,
Hmm.
and this started so. Troll Lord Games CEO Steve Chenault threw this out a few days ago of if we do TrollCon, because I think they'd done this TrollCon thing in Little Rock, Arkansas up to the pandemic. They've done a few, and I don't
Yeah.
think it's been I don't think it's been revived since then. So they said, if we can get one of those going for September, will people be interested? To which I sort of piped in, well, do you know what? That's a nice little gap in the convention season over here. So I said, well, okay, if you get that going, would you be interested in a satellite event? Similar to Paizo, I've got PaizoCon coming up in a few weeks, and there's a satellite event in Manchester, and they're going to do live video links and things like that. And I thought, well, do you know what? Why not? We could do that. So we don't have a venue, we don't have a confirmed date, we don't actually know if it's definitely happening, but if it does and we can pull something together. I was messaged yesterday by a guy who is running an event at Chepstow Castle in the next couple of weeks, saying that that might be a potential venue. And do you know what? That sounds good. Castles and Crusades in a castle. It might happen. I'm waiting on Trolls. We're waiting, seeing what they want to do to support it. And if we can get it going, but a key thing is we're going to need people to run games.
Yes.
So you may have inadvertently volunteered for that, because I don't know if I'm good enough to run a C&C game with my knowledge of the rules as it stands now. So we would definitely need a handful of GMs, what have you. But it seems to me like there's a decent enough following here in the UK to get something like that going.
I think you would be quite successful on that. If not for this year, then certainly next year. But hopefully this year that would be absolutely great. And there's enough gamers in the UK, very definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very definitely.
Yeah. Like you say, definitely enough gamers. But like I said, I know this. I know it's a popular system, but then you've got how many gamers, how many fantasy gamers, how many people like C&C, and how many of those can and will come to a convention.
Yeah.
So you get an ever decreasing number, but if that number's 30 or 40, we'll get something going. I think that would be brilliant. I think
that's it. Well, that would be a few tables going anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And what do you need? You need a few tables, a bar, and somebody will throw a bowl of chili and rice at you every once in a while, and you're golden, aren't you?
Absolutely, absolutely perfect. Or a medieval feast. There you go.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves, though, eh?
Well, thanks very much for talking to us today. Really appreciate it. I know you've got something going on. But I'd love it if you could actually sort of rejoin us at some stage, and we'll have a chat about that off camera in a minute or two. So, thank you for your time, and see you soon, everyone. Thanks very much.
Happy gaming, everybody.
Have fun. Bye-bye.
Bye.